I got out of pilot training and got to fly a B-52. Our class got nothing but B-52s, it seemed like. There were a couple of National Guard fighters and a couple of T-37 and T-33 instructor pilot slots, but most of us got many, many engines. I got 8. I think our class averaged about 6 engines per man. And I got B-52s and I loved it. The B-52 is an awesome, awesome airplane. I mean, it's a great big Hummer. It really is. It's got 8 engines, and it was fun to fly when I got to fly it. Usually I got to run the systems. So I was there and got checked out on a crew and got put on alert, got to fly a couple of Chrome Dome missions. That's the kind where you take off and you sit there for about 30 hours and you fly up and around the Arctic Ocean, and then you fly down to China, and then you fly back to Alaska, and then you fly back home, and didn't get to sleep the whole time. Well, that got old real quick. Then we'd go on alert, and that got old real quick. 7 days on alert, nuclear alert, you don't get to do anything but sit there and study and watch TV and have a lot of fun in a lot of other ways, like playing Risk at night or listen to people talk in the library. And you sit there on alert, and that's all you do. 16, 17 days, maybe 20 days of alert per month. That's 24 hours a day you're working, except you're really studying, and you kind of finally get to a point where you finally learn most of the stuff. And then they said, okay, you guys are going to fly iron bombs. Iron bombs are what are, steel bombs, iron bombs. They're the things they dropped on Europe in World War II. They had a bunch left over, so they said, let's try them on Vietnam. Lyndon Johnson decided, we're going to send 2 wings of B-52s over to Guam. They're going to land, refuel, and take off again after they've loaded their bombs, and we're going to fly up to the Hanoi area and overfly Hanoi at about 300 feet. That's 500 MSL, mean sea level. And we would go up over there with 30 B-52s right straight across Hanoi, pop up to 1,500 feet, and drop on the Fukien airfield. That's 1,530 large bombs. We would have wiped out Fukien. The war would have ended right there. Think about it. We could have ended the war in 1 combat mission. 30 B-52s, we'd have scared the hell out of everybody in Hanoi, overflying about 10 o'clock at night at 200 or 300 feet. But we didn't do that. We got to Guam, and we went in to have a meal while they were loading and refueling our planes. And I got to tell you why, is because on February 7th, 1965, the war started in early August of 1964, when Everett Alvarez got shot down and captured. The Navy had a strike against some people, and the problem was they were killing lots of people over there. The communists were killing a whole lot of people. So they decided we better send some B-52s over there and stop this stuff. But we got over there February 7th, 1965. The Viet Cong went in and attacked our base in the highlands in the near around Pleiku, and they murdered and killed 27 of our Army Special Forces troops. 27 of them. Now, as you know, even Lyndon Johnson didn't like people killing our young men, so that's when he sent us, and that was on February 11th, 1965. We deployed. So we landed there, and our mission over Hanoi and knocking out the Fukien airfield was the first mission. That's Arc Light 1. So my question, those are questions that are now answered, and that is the reason we fought the Vietnam War, was to stop that kind of murderous stuff by the communists. One day they came to us and said, well, we think we're going to have to fly a mission now. Okay, is it going to be to Hanoi? No, it's going to be the Iron Triangle northwest of Saigon. Oh, that's a nothing target. So they said, okay, get ready, and we all got ready and briefed and did all the studying and did everything we had to do, and we got ready and flew that mission. Took off at 3 o'clock in the morning, 30 B-52s, 1 minute apart, 2 minutes between each cell. A mile behind and 500 feet above. That was a standard formation for B-52s throughout the Vietnam War. And that was 3 ships make 1 cell. There were 10 cells, and we were the number 3 ship in the 3rd cell. So there was a typhoon in the area, and we said, a bunch of us lieutenants went in and said, you don't have any timing triangles. What about the timing? If everybody gets there early or late, we can't make up or lose time. They wouldn't put it in. So our cell, there was a typhoon in the area. Turns out it was Typhoon Dinah, the 4th largest typhoon in the history of the world that we know of. So we get over there, and we're 9 minutes early. We're sucked in by that typhoon, and we're supposed to meet our tanker on time. So you got to do a 360. Well, they screwed up at SAC headquarters, and they put all the refueling tracks, 5 of them, down the South China Sea, 25 miles apart. The rules said 50 miles apart minimum, right? They put them 25 miles apart. So I got out of the seat and went downstairs to take my nervous pre-refueling leak, which we all did. And I got back in, and the pilot got out, and he went downstairs to do the same. And when he got back in, before he did, lead turned left. 2 followed him, and I said, hey, radar, what are they doing? Are they thinking about doing a 360 to lose the 9 minutes? We're early? Says, Roger, keep your eyeballs open. Eyeballs open. My eyeballs were about this big at the time. And I looked, and I strapped myself in, double-checked the pins were out, did everything I had to do. Pilot got in, he was madder than anything. We were just upset, because the B-52 does a 360-degree turn, takes 25 miles diameter to do it. And I said to the radar, I said, if there's another cell following us and a track just south of us, we're going to meet them head on. Raj, keep your eyeballs open. Well, middle of the night is about 7 o'clock in the morning Guam time, but it's still about 4 o'clock in the morning over in the Philippines. And we're right out about 150 miles northwest of Manila in the South China Sea. And I look up halfway through the turn, and here comes a B-52 directly at me head on. And it's 11, we calculated this later, it was 1,100 miles an hour closing speed, and had about 2 seconds before it hit. And I've always thought, you know, if I only could have had 30 seconds to look into the future, I could have pulled that plane up, even if the pilot had taken it back, and missed that other plane. But what happened, and I'm going to put the mic down, we came together like this, and he was in a slight dive. I looked up, and here came a drop tank, 18,000 pounds of gas going to hit me right in the face. I saw the one light, it split into 2, then I saw this tanker, or this bomber up here and another bomber down there, and they just seemed to come right at us. And I thought, oh my God. And this tank just came in, and I saw this great big shape coming at me, and you know, that quick, from about 2 miles out, and it just slowly slid under, very slowly slid under our cockpit, and that great big tail very slowly slid by here. That's how fast the mind works when you're, but that tail went slowly sliding by at 1,100 miles an hour, and I thought, whew, we missed. Whoop, got to recalculate. If their drop tank nearly hit me in the face, our drop tank's going to hit them in the tail, and that's what happened. There was an explosion they saw in several different directions, 200 miles away, which blew our right wing off, and everything upstairs went black. And I thought we still had a wing. I thought we just lost the tip end of it. But it blew our right wing off, and we went down just like that. And the other plane went into a spin because it lost its tail. So we're going down, the other plane went down, and I said, okay, it's time to eject. So I sat up, I tried to fly the plane for a little bit, couldn't even see the attitude indicator. I could barely see the throttles, and I didn't know what happened to the pilot. But I said, okay, somebody ejected and the place fogged up. And so I sat up straight and I said, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And I pulled on both handles. The left handle came up, the right handle wouldn't budge. I know I'd checked the pins, so I squeezed the left handle and nothing happened. I squeezed it again and nothing happened. I pulled up on the right handle several more times, nothing happened. I thought we were flying straight and level. We were going straight down. So I finally turned my head, looked down, and like this, I pulled on that handle and squeezed it, and it fired with my head in this position. About a 5-pound helmet on my head, and it broke my neck, and I didn't know it. But I ejected, and I looked, I felt myself go out. I watched my head, you know, kind of tilted like this as I watched that hatch fall away. And the next thing I knew, I was out in the slipstream, and I felt myself going backwards like this, and just then the plane and the bombs and everything else blew up. My left leg was pulled out of socket, and my left calf was pulverized. And so I kind of sensed that big tail going by, and just after it got past, boom, and the seat itself protected me from getting blown to bits. So next thing I know, the chute kind of pops open real soft, and I bang, and I'm sitting there floating and looking around, and I look down, and the fires all over the ocean. There were 2 B-52s on the water with 500,000 pounds of gas burning, and 102 bombs had blown up, plus these 2 planes. And it reminded me of Rome burning. I said, my God, Rome is burning down there. And I'm alone in this little parachute. I looked around to see if there were other people, and I saw a parachute right back over here, so I twisted my parachute around to say hi and shout at him, but the parachute kept twisting. Wait a minute, you know, and it just kept twisting. I did everything I could to get it to turn back, and finally it did. I said, I'm not going to screw with this anymore. But then I looked down, and these fires had created a kind of not a mushroom cloud, but a column of hot air rising up, and it's coming straight at me. And I thought, oh my God, now what am I going to do? And this stuff came up and rushed right beside me, and it knocked the parachute into a cattywampus thing, and I go swinging, and I'm looking down at the fires and into the bowl of my parachute, wondering, uh-oh, one more swing, and I'm going to land in my parachute, and then I'm going to fall like Icarus all the way to the ocean. And I thought, what am I going to do now? And I swear to God, I don't know why these things come to mind, but the law of conservation of angular momentum from college physics came into my mind, and I said, pop the life raft. I did. The life raft came out, the survival kit came out, bang, I stabilized, and I said, I'm not going to screw with this parachute ever again. That was twice it tried to kill me. I had 2 more times to go. So I'm coming down, and I think, oh, if I could only just live my life out here in this parachute, I don't want to hit that ocean. And by then, the fires were going out. I was in the chute. I ejected at apparently about 15,000. We hit at about 30,000. So I'm looking down, and it's getting closer, and the fires are gone, but the waves were gigantic. And I found out recently that they were 80 feet high. 80 feet high. That's higher than this hangar by twice, easy. And I'm sitting there thinking, uh-oh, I'm going to be in that pretty soon. And it was all glowing turquoise with white caps on top being blown right across. So I thought, uh-oh, look out, don't peek, look out, don't peek, look straight ahead, don't peek. That was tough. I peeked, and then I hit, and kind of zam, went sideways. The typhoon winds, I don't know, 125, 140 knots, something like that. And I was going like mad. So I'm rolling over and rolling over, and I'm swallowing water, and I finally got on my back and held my feet out. And that kind of stabilized me on my back. So then I tried to release these new hook rings. And the Air Force, in their infinite wisdom, didn't have the parachute shop do that. They wanted us pilots to do it 10 times before each mission for 10 missions, and that'll loosen these things up. Well, I took the clasp down, and I had these 2 rings, and I pulled and pulled and pulled. I couldn't release that thing. Both hands in my right ring, and I finally released it, and it whipped free like a bullwhip, and I stopped dead in the water. And I'm still attached over here, but I was too busy to think about something else, because it's, hey, how about surviving? I saw the life raft, I swam over to it, I was tied to it, and I got in. I pulled in my Arctic survival kit in the South China Sea in summer, and I read through on how to survive on the Arctic tundra and what you should be eating up there and what you should be doing to keep warm. And I thought, we've been here 4 months in Guam, and they haven't changed these survival kits, so it was a joke. So I'm in the life raft, and I pull out this square thing about 1 inch thick and about 1 foot square, and I look at it, and it says 1 each Arctic survival sleeping bag. I put it on the wave, and it went sliding down right into the water, down at the bottom of a wave. And that's the other thing. Now imagine you're here, and 10 seconds later you're up there, and then 10 seconds later you're back down here. 10 seconds later you're up there, and this gets real monotonous and real sickening. So I'm sitting there going through all this stuff, and I pulled out a little gun. It was a Hornet rifle. It was a .22. And what am I going to do, shoot a polar bear with this thing? So I put it together, and I thought, nope. I just dropped it into the water. And I got out these cards that showed me all the good plants to eat and the things I could do and all the bad things you should not eat in the Arctic. I said, my gosh, I'm 8,000 miles from the Arctic. What am I going to do with this stuff? I tossed them, and a little while later, I'm going up, and then bam, there was nothing left of the life raft. The survival kit, the life raft had deflated. And I didn't realize it, and I was paying attention to everything else in the book, but what was really important. And it flipped me, and I went underwater. Now remember, a parachute is still attached, and a parachute can begin to weigh upwards of 1 ton, I think. It's something like 1 ton within minutes after being soaked, and I was underwater and going down fast. Now, one thing I had done was I double-tied myself to the raft. The survival kit and the parachute dragged me under, and I'm way under. Now, down here, right in the middle of the thigh, is a little orange knife, and it's got a hook blade on it. And I pulled that thing out, and I tried to cut the parachute cords here because I could feel them. And it wasn't working, so I had a switchblade on the other side. I flipped it, and I started slicing, and of course, I still have scars on my fingers from that. But I sliced that parachute off, and it went away, and of course I sliced the survival kit, and it went away, and I popped to the top, and I still had my boots on. I don't know how I made it up to the top again, and I saw the life raft there, and I wadded it up, and it kind of was about the same size as a basketball, and I thought, oh, at least I can breathe. But then I got mad. I got mad at God, I got mad at myself, I got especially mad at SAC, and I was livid with LBJ. I got up there, I put that thing, and I found the little blowhole, the little blow tube thing, and I pushed in on that, and I blew that thing up, and I squeezed it shut, and nobody had done that, which you're supposed to do in the parachute shop. And I got into the life raft, and that's all I had left. That, and I take it back. I had my .38, a little pistol, and I had my helmet. And why I wanted to keep that helmet, I don't know. I still don't know. But I had the helmet, and I had the .38, and I had my life raft, and I had nothing else, and I had hope. But I was losing it. What am I going to do now? And so I just sat there, and I looked up, and you come up on a wave, and you take a look at what's all around you, and then you go back down. Now it's dark, still dark, but it was glowing. The ocean was a turquoise blue from the plankton, I imagine, I found out later. And I come up and I looked, and through this maelstrom is an orange and a black ship about, maybe a half a mile less away, maybe a quarter mile away, just north of me. I could tell which way it was north, just sensing it. And I looked, and there's a ship. I said, I must be dreaming. I went back down, and I looked for a flare. I looked for a radio. It all had broken off, and everything had gone away with the survival kit. There was nothing in it that was worthwhile. They put that on the backside of it, and it broke off in the ejection. All the signaling devices, except the mirror. I still had a mirror. And I come up and I look at that thing, and how can I get a hold of it? I can't wave. They wouldn't see me. They didn't care. They were all inside drinking coffee. They were bouncing up and down and carrying on. And then I watched it go clear over here, and I looked, and there was a white ship coming this way. I thought, I know I'm hallucinating now. I could just forget it. And I went down, and I just kind of relaxed, and I bobbed up, and I watched, and I thought, they're going to have a mid-ship collision, or mid-ocean collision with the ships, like our mid-air collision up there, all in the same thing, and then there's going to be survivors out here with me, and they're going to want my one-man life raft. Now, this thing was smaller than the top of this podium. It was about 1 foot wide and about 1.5 feet long. That was the inside surface of it, and that's big enough for my butt now. And that was about it. But I watched, and this white ship came along, and there was flares going off just over here. So I knew someone was over there, somebody that I saw when I had ejected, and I turned around before my parachute wrapped up. And I'm looking at that, and I thought, oh, wow. I said, somebody else is alive. Maybe I'm not hallucinating. And the white ship kept on going. A little while later, a tanker overflew that. Eric Heilberg was his name. He was a Mather tanker pilot. He dropped gas all over that white ship, trying to get their attention. They wouldn't come up on their emergency frequencies, and he dropped gas on top of me. He said, man, if I'd had a match, I'd have thrown it out and lit him. But that didn't work either, so they went around, and finally the sun was rising over here. That's how I could tell it was north for sure. And the waves were starting to die down a lot. And that way's east, that way's north, and the white ship's gone, and the orange and black shipper's gone. So I sat there and I waited. And then there was a tanker, went right over the top of me with a roar about 200 feet. And I'll tell you, it was awesome. When they're going across at full speed, and you got a big plane doing it, it gets your attention. He went right across me. He went out and did a teardrop and came back, and he was right about here. And I could see people in the big open doorway there, their cargo door, and they threw out a 20-man life raft. I went down, I came back up, and it was gone. Years later, he asked me, he says, why didn't you just swim over to it? He said it was only a couple of 100 yards away. I said, I never saw it again. Never saw it, didn't know which direction exactly it was. I did try to paddle over a little bit, but the waves were still too big. So anyway, finally the waves are dying down, and I heard a and I looked, and I could see a little seaplane way off, 5 or 6, 8 miles away, going around that area down there to the southwest. And then he disappeared. And then I heard him again about 20 minutes later, and he was right over there. And I nearly jumped out of my skin. I grabbed my gun, I poured the water out of it, and I went bam, bam, bam. So I fired the gun, and then he didn't even hear that, of course, the waves and the wind. But the waves were about, by this time, 8 to 10 feet high, so they died down a lot. And anyway, he finally taxied over to me, and he came around, and he headed out that way, and then he backed up. And I could see that propeller coming right at me, and I was still bouncing up and down in the waves, and I said, there ain't no way I'm going to let him chop me into fish bait. So I saw on the pontoon on the side of it was a tie-down ring. I saw that on this pontoon under his wing. I leapt for that, and I grabbed onto that, and I wasn't going to get let go. They had to send a PJ, a parajumper, over to pull me off of it. And I'm holding onto this thing happy that you can fly off. I'll hang onto this all the way back to Clark or wherever you came from. So he finally, suddenly this kid popped out of the ocean. I said, "Are you Neptune?" But you got to understand, I was crazy with hallucinations and everything else by this time. And I thought he was Neptune. I said, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Lieutenant, let go of that." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I'll pull you over. See that door right back there? I'll pull you over to the door and we can get in the cockpit and we'll dry you off." That sounds good, because I was nearly frozen to death in the winds and the wind chill there in the South China Sea, even though it was summertime. So they pulled me in, and I sat in there, and there was one guy already rescued, a radar navigator on the other plane. And Chuck Anderman was his name, and I'm saying, "Who are you, and what crew are you on?" And he goes, well, he couldn't talk, neither could I. He couldn't understand me, and I couldn't understand him. So they took my flight suit off, and they popped my life raft and threw it back in the water, and I said, "I wanted to save that." They didn't. We don't want to rescue it again. So they destroyed the life raft. But they wrapped me in a blanket, cut a Mae West in half, and I remember, I was so seasick. I'd already vomited several till I couldn't do it anymore. And Jay Collier was my navigator, and Jim Herbst was my electronic warfare officer. And Jim was very fastidious. He very carefully barfed into his life raft because we were all really, really sick for days. Jay very carefully barfed outside the life raft. I saw a shark out there, and I didn't care. I was so sick, I just went all over my shoulder, because the next wave washed it off anyway. So we got into the plane, and they cut a Mae West in half and said, "Here, barf into this." And here I am, smiling, happiest guy in the world, barfing into a Mae West. I thought, this is wonderful. This is going to be great. And then we saw Jay Collier, and then we picked up Jim Herbst. So we had 4 of us alive, and then they said, "Let's get out of here. It's time to leave." And I said, "I think it's about right," because I looked down right here, and there was a red emergency bilge, and it popped up, and water flowed into the cabin. And I looked at the PJ, and I said, "Are we going to sink?" And he said, "Yeah, so we're going to try to take off instead." I said, "Oh, okay." And I'm sitting there, "Oh, this is really wonderful. Let's take off and get out of this place." So we're looking at that thing, and he took off, and he hit these waves. They were about 8 or 10 feet high. It was real hard. What he'd done was, when he landed in them, he cracked the hull, and it was filled with water by this time. Well, we took off, and we hit these waves. We took off about 6 times, and bam, bam. Finally, we got airborne one time, and it went, and it crashed. And it was a worse actual crash than the B-52 midair. So we're going to sink, and we're going to die. And I said, "You popped my life raft, and I can't deal with this anymore." So then he said, "All right." I looked out the window, and there was that orange and black ship. They sent over a canoe. It was a Norwegian freighter named the Argo. A canoe, and I swear to God, it wasn't much wider than this podium, and it was about as long as from here to the camera. And they told us to get in it, and there was a pilot up in the front seat. He was in the IP jump seat, and I said, "Hey, isn't Joe Robertson going to come with us?" And PJ looked at me and said, "No, Captain Robertson is dead." That's when it hit me. I got into the canoe, and I was devastated. I realized we'd lost people, and we probably weren't going to get any back. We didn't. 8 guys were killed. So they rowed us over to the Norwegian freighter, and they threw a rope down the side. "Can't you throw a ladder or something for us to climb?" "No, you can climb up with a rope." So I was really weak, but I walked up that rope. They at least tied it around Colonel Anderman, because he was injured pretty badly. And we finally got up into the Norwegian freighter, and they sent over from a Navy ship, the Point Defiance, that they sent over a launch to pick us up. And they finally picked us up, and we finally got over to a Navy ship, and the first thing they were always doing was asking our names and serial numbers. And we told them all this stuff, and it was, "Okay, yeah, you got all the answers there, that's enough." And finally, we didn't eat for about 3 days. We could eat a little, drink a little bit of broth, and that was about it. It was just so sickening to even think about. So anyway, they got us back and took us back to Clark Air Base to put us in a hospital and wouldn't let us talk to anybody. SAC, does anybody remember SAC? That's how they worked. So we couldn't talk to anybody for a couple of days, and then they flew us back to Guam, and we were home, and we had to go through the briefings, and we had to buy the parachute shop a bottle of booze. And I bought the cheapest booze I could find. They hadn't done their job, period. So we got back and finally lived and survived.